Welcome to Flying for Flavor.
Welcome.
Hello. We're at a pub.
Yay.
So again, for those of you who were noticed last week or watched last week's episode or or for those who are watching on YouTube, let me start there. We're attempting this new 2-camera thing because now that we're at restaurants, we are strategically trying to put camera angles at different places so that we can see us. So sometimes you'll see sides of people's heads and that kind of thing on the video part, but if you're just listening to the podcast, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. You can envision us all sitting around you.
And we're fully made up. We've got tons of makeup and we look like supermodels. Says the girl who never wears makeup.
I hear you.
We are beautiful. We are all size 3s.
Yes, we're all size 3s.
With big boobs.
Never in my life have I ever been a size 3.
Maybe when you were 2.
Maybe when I was 2. So we are at one of our little favorite spots. We actually celebrated our anniversary, our
first
season
anniversary
launch.
of the podcast.
Yeah, here at Finn McCool's in South End of Sudbury. So look at us. Look at us drinking on the show again. So one of the reasons, of course, that we wanted to be here as well is to feature different restaurants who are participating in the Flavor Fest Festival. So this is going to be a first for Finn McCool's, a little test run for them, which I think is very exciting. So not only is our general manager, Bev, a really good friend of ours.
We need to shout out for Bev.
Shout out.
She's
I was hoping she'd be here when we were taping today, but it's her day off, so I didn't want to drag her
to
here.
the show, and her hospitality is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
I mean, Finn's is a chain, so it's same everywhere, but there's something about what Bev does that makes it really special.
Yeah, and she's passionate about her industry and about food and service to others, and anyways.
And
so
she's just a kind lady.
It was just the whole big sending her big loves. Anyways.
Love you, Bev.
Anyways, she's going to be, she's also happens to be a very talented cook. And it was surprising, I guess she told me that her head office was actually suggested it to her. So she's actually going to be doing a cooking class here on the Sunday.
She's doing a cooking class.
She's doing a cooking demo.
So excited.
So for all of you who are big fans of a lot of the pies that they have here at Finn McCool's, she's going to be doing a demo of how they make their steak and mushroom pie from scratch.
Love it.
As in how they do their pastry to the filling to everything else. So you can actually come in and actually watch the demo of how everything's made. There is going to be somebody here repping for Guinness as well. So they're actually doing a whole Guinness and steak and mushroom pie combo deal. So you pay the 1 ticket price, you get of course one of the steak and mushroom pies, you get a pint of Guinness, you get to watch the cooking show, and I think it's $30.
Nice.
Which is awesome.
Yeah.
Anyways, of course, I was going to say there's limited tickets, but depending how many she can squeeze in and where she's going to set up, depending on how many people are here.
You're only limited by the fire code.
So come on.
Anyways, it's going to be a big, for a Sunday afternoon, I think that's like a huge
I'm
fun
going to
thing.
be there.
Well, that's the whole thing. We have to have a discussion after this show about who gets to go where.
Divide up the events.
I bought a ticket.
Oh, yeah, she did.
She is going.
She was one of the first to buy a ticket, then I teased her. I'm like, wait a minute.
We don't have to buy tickets.
But I want the cookbook. You get this excellent cookbook. If you're the first 10 people that actually buy in,
that's what she
you
wants.
get the cookbook. But I
it's
would
not
love
just
to
limited
see.
edition. They don't even make it anymore.
I know.
Which is very cool.
Exciting.
There's only 10 of them.
Excited.
So it's actually recipes that are from the Finn McCool's menus, either past or present. So anyways, it's a cool deal, but it's the first 10 people. So if you're in Sudbury, get on it.
Get on it.
Get on it. So yes, I was going to say, look at me having beer. I know, for a change.
I'm having cider.
I'm having a Guinness in actually support. They have a March festival going on right now.
Through Irish Fest.
Irish Fest, sorry. And Guinness is one of their specials this month, of course, and leading into my favorite day.
St.
Patty's Day, where I always take the next day off.
Okay, so note. So we will not be taping on St. Patrick's Day or the day after, obviously. So one of the reasons we wanted to do this show's topic is called The Vacay Goes Wrong. Partly because I know Stacy had a story to share that she'll share a bit later because she was just in Mexico. And then a couple of friends of Cynthia's were also posting little stories about, and it's one of those things that we had a lot of things to talk about on how to avoid it or how to handle when things like that go wrong. I hate to see or hate to hear about people's vacations or travel, especially if they're new to traveling.
Yes.
Because I feel it might discourage them from traveling more. And because I'm planning my own trip.
Yes.
Another one. Yay. So I'm going to Brazil in March, which I'm really excited. It was a very last minute decision. It's another one to check off a list. Norm and I talked about going to Rio de Janeiro for I don't know how many years, and
That's
it
the
was.
place for the big Jesus
yes,
statue.
it is the
statue.
big-
I just want to go see the big Jesus statue because I've
Uh-huh.
seen it. It's
In
so
movies.
iconic.
I
so
know.
many
So
movies.
it's just like a check that. And we're staying. We went through Airbnb. We got an amazing deal. We just got an apartment right downtown, and I'm basically going to walk around in
that was me.
sneakers,
Bless you, what is happening?
sneakers, shorts, tank top, hair in a knot with a hat on my head, and I'm going to like that for a week.
Good for you.
I love it.
And I'm going to eat street food, and anyways, it's going to be. So because of I'm planning for that, some of the planning things that I'm going through is a good planning tips for people to avoid having vacays go wrong.
And you know what I think sometimes is when you go on a vacation, and I'm probably totally off topic, but it's almost inevitable to think that it's going to go perfectly right. There's always blips. So I'm glad that we're having the show because I think it's
Yeah.
really interesting. 'Cause
Yeah,
everybody has a different perspective on it, right?
And what everyone else thinks is a big deal or not, but that's a whole other.
right, because we all have a different expectations.
Putting things into perspective, I think sometimes well is really important.
Okay, now that Cynthia's
Absolutely.
back though, we can get her on because last week we didn't do.
I missed you guys.
We didn't do industry updates.
I missed you guys. I also heard that we didn't get an E rating last week. I'm sure
We did not. We were a clean
tried.
reading.
I'm
We
sure
tried.
that is not
Did you
a
not say
coincidence.
heck or something? You
I
guys so
said
close.
shit, I think.
No, you said what the hell or what the heck or something
Yeah,
like
I know.
this.
It was totally lame.
It was. It was good for a giggle.
It's so amazing because my mother would so not be proud. That's why my mom will probably never listen to or watch the show, because if she learned that I was the reason we get the E every week, that would not be a reason to make her proud at all. Okay,
I can
industry
start helping
updates.
you.
Yes.
Industry updates. So this first one's really interesting to me because it's really in line with what we do, and I'm kind of excited to see what they do with it. So we mentioned on the show in the past about Somm, the movie. It was a documentary on the wine industry. Well, Somm is actually now creating their own TV channel called Somm TV. So if you go to sommtv.com, they've got a place where you can sign up for updates. But it looks like it's going to be a whole television station all about wine and the wine industry. So films, TV shows, educational content. So basically it's like a channel made for us. So I thought I'd check with you guys. What do you think?
You know what? This is the first time I've heard of it, but I'm definitely going to take a look for
Yeah,
sure.
I haven't gone through that. I mean, I said I kind of saw it in my Twitter feed, but I'm just kind of curious because they mentioned about food stuff or whatever. Because there's so many other channels. Like there's the travel channel, and one of my only complaints
Food
is
Network.
that right there's so much overlap between a lot of these channels. They give them a name, right, and then all of a sudden they're doing something else, right? Like the History Channel's not just history. Right?
I think the classic
Exactly.
examples like MTV and Much Music, that it got to the point where you turn on MTV or you turn on Much Music and there would never be a music video.
Correct.
So I think it's being careful that when you're the challenge of like a mainstream television channel like that is because you're appealing to a niche market, you've got a finite kind of amount of viewers you can get, and if those viewers aren't tuning in regularly, that's when they start to deviate from their traditional content. So it'll be interesting to see. I could see potentially doing something like what we do, like a YouTube channel or like a Netflix ongoing kind of thing.
So
but
if
to do a
anyone
whole
wants
TV
us to
channel.
turn our show into a Netflix or YouTube thing,
Netflix,
just let
we're
us know.
here, we're ready. We'll
I'll
get
start
makeup
writing-
for those shows.
I'll start writing the scripts.
Or
Prime TV, Amazon.
See, Prime TV, Amazon. We're portable.
Yeah, Belle, you
travel.
want to do something? We'll hook you up. We're not picky.
Hey, Oprah.
Yes!
Reaching for the stars.
Oh, but Oprah,
Ellen.
I'm sure
Network
Oprah
or
would
Ellen?
not let me say fuck though.
She would probably not.
Yeah.
Ellen would, though.
They'd cut me. Ellen would.
Ellen would.
We're
Ellen.
in girlfriend. You and I
Hashtag
danced
Ellen.
together a long
We
time
can
ago.
dance.
I've got the T-shirt to prove. Anyways, that's a whole other story. Other news. This was something that was interesting and kind of frustrating, and I'm going to pull it up because I don't have all of the details on it. But Air Canada reportedly backtracked on compensation that they offered a passenger after they gave up their seat on an overcrowded flight. So talking about travel disasters, and we'll get to a point where I'll talk about a time when our flight was overbooked.
Yep.
And there we were with our 2 children at 6 o'clock in the morning in an airport getting ready to go to Australia, and we missed all of our flights and they had to rebook us, and it was a nightmare. So in this case, there's new... Let me try that again. So let's edit that out.
There you go.
So in this particular case, there is a passenger who was asked to give up their seat for someone else to be able to travel, and they were promised it was an $800 voucher for giving up his seat. And what happened is new legislation was passed that provides no guaranteed compensation for volunteers. So even though they can say, yeah, we'll give that to you, there's actually no recourse.
Okay, because they actually will do, I mean, I've seen it in airports or we've heard about it,
Yeah.
where there's usually somebody wandering around. If you have flexible travel schedule, I can see how it's good, where you're walking around and you are, you're constantly looking or listening for that offer.
Yes.
Right? So, you know, hey, we're a little bit overbooked. We have if two people are willing to give up their seats, we have compensation of a certain amount. So you're telling me now that the legislation's there, that the airlines don't have to stick to it when they bribe you to get off the plane.
So here's how it went down. So he was on the kiosk at the Vancouver International Airport, and a screen popped up as he was checking in saying that they may need volunteers to accept compensation in exchange for giving up their seat. Would you be willing to be added to our list of potential volunteers to give up your seat? And this guy's like, well, you know, I don't have any pressing business at home, and you could hear babies crying and other obviously people who had a stronger need than he had. So he's like, I'll give it up, no big deal. So he approached the gate agent and said, you know, I'll take a later flight. You know, what are you going to do for me? And so the agent initially told him he'd get a $600 voucher, but later, as he boarded his plane, the gate agent turned the screen to show him that he was actually getting an $800 voucher. But the next day, instead of the voucher, this gentleman got an email from Air Canada offering a 15% discount on a future flight.
Oh.
So it's almost like a buyer beware, like a bait and switch kind of a situation, and that's scary.
See, I thought they handed you actually vouchers when they did that, and they gave you like a piece of paper saying this is what you're getting, or is that just like the food
The joy of it
voucher?
being all electronic.
That's
now,
those
right?
food vouchers.
Those are the food vouchers. Go have a snack
Yeah.
for $5. Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
go have dinner for 15.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah.
so that we're not being completely biased, the other side, Air Canada replied and acknowledged that he had been offered an $800 voucher, but claimed because he had been moved to an earlier flight than the $800 voucher had been offered on, they were like, well, it's okay to just give him a discount instead.
Oh, so he didn't take the flight.
He ended up on, so let's say he was leaving at 5, they offered him a 10 p.m. flight, they got him on an 8 p.m. flight, so they went, well, you don't get the $800 now, you're only going to get 15% off because we got you out earlier than you agreed to.
Oh, you originally.
Well, but still, I don't know.
So, and then finally, Air Canada said the airline offered $300 for future travel to this gentleman as a goodwill offer. But definitely from a marketing perspective,
I think my thought would be, or my suggestion would be, because regardless of what the legislation is, I think it's always good to have it in writing.
Yeah.
The other thing is that when they offered him to take the earlier flight, he probably was not aware that they have that
You would
flexibility.
renege on the actual
Right?
deal.
Or change things where he could say, well, I'll take that earlier flight, but am I still getting my $800? Right? And then it gives, at least it's up to the passenger to say,
No, I'll wait.
yeah, exactly. Like if it's 2 hours later,
I'll wait.
yeah, I'll wait for the extra $800.
so there is a lobbying agency that got involved. Let me just get the name of them.
Yeah.
Go Public is the
How do
okay.
you read that?
So there actually is a lobbying agency that's involved called Air Passenger Rights, who advised on this. And there's also, I think he contacted the media, and it was called Go Public was the organization that he, or the show that he contacted. So Go Public are the ones that actually contacted the airline, and the airline actually increased it again. So there are places you can go for help. I mean, this gentleman went to the media, and it definitely worked out for him. And I think when you see a company like that conceding so quickly, they're recognizing that they were in the wrong and that they tried to make a funny. And you know, you hear these stories a lot about, and it's, you know, you can say it's one person or the other person, but at the end of the day, Air Canada is liable for all of those people on the ground. So you have to ask. I would love to know, you know, is this a regular thing? I'd love to talk to someone, you know, in secret from Air Canada who's like, yeah, we're told not to offer these things or offer it in this way. And it's an interesting.
So say, do I know anyone in Canada? I just know a pilot, and he wouldn't know.
Yeah, it would be someone who's kind of,
In
who
the
basically be
know.
someone on the front lines who's like a manager or someone who offers these.
If
these
you
good
are,
deals. If
you are one, we would love to talk to you.
We'll keep you anonymous, but I would be really curious, because I mean,
What are your
this could lead
guidelines?
to a much bigger thing, right?
Yep.
In what people are offered. So I think that for me, in a situation like that, I'd be asking, like you say, for something in writing. Email it to me right now, so I have it in my email. Take a photo, a screenshot or something, so that you can say, this is what I was offered and this is what I want back.
Well-
But it definitely becomes a legal thing, because the argument is that you've entered into a contract by saying, yes, I will take a later flight, and the Air Canada representative is saying, I'm going to give you an $800. That becomes a verbal contract, and if you've got
Absolutely.
proof of it, then that can be upheld later in court.
And definitely it leads to kind of a precarious precedent for
Very
any
much.
of the airlines, especially Air Canada, now that they've done this. So next time that you bump me, I want $800.
Well, that's why they try to avoid it too, right?
You know, so now it's out there. What do you do?
Well, I think it was usually, I want to say when they're doing those pitches and the, right at the gate, it's usually like this auction type system where
Right,
they
yeah.
start off
Right.
by saying like opening bid is, okay,
I'll
we
give you
will
$100.
offer- Yeah,
I'll give you. How about 150?
and then they go up
Give
for
you
a
a
certain
food
thing.
voucher.
So it probably didn't start at 600.
Yeah.
Right? It probably started at something lower and they eventually brought it up to that point. So he accepted it saying, okay, well I can take the couple hours or whatever and it'll be worth it that way. And then to get this 15% off thing afterwards,
It's a
it was
slap in
kind of
the
like
face.
Slap in the face. It'd be interesting to see their guidelines, and I think that if we can reach out to everybody, if you have that info under the table, we
if
would
I
love to
find
hear it.
it'd be a good time to say that if I happen to find a link, I will post it in the show notes. So again, if this is the first time that you're watching or listening to this show, seriously, first time.
Welcome.
The show
We're
notes.
happy to have you.
Exactly.
The show notes that's listed within the description in the YouTube channel below, or in your podcast, right in the details section of the episode that you're listening to. There's going to be a little link. That link takes you directly to the webpage on our website, and that is the place that even if you're listening to the podcast, you'll see photos. You'll get a link to the YouTube version if you want it. You will have any other links to. So like last week we were talking about the food competition. So last week's you'll have the link to, I put the link in for the Canadian Barbecue Society. I put the link in for the Kansas City Barbecue Society. I put a link in for MasterChef Canada. I put a link in for Chop Canada. So all of these places that if you have an interest in doing those things, every time we do a show, I try to
Link
fill
everything.
up the show notes with resources or things, or if there's specific articles and or photographs that we're referring to, they're all going to be there for you in the show notes. Because it doesn't all fit in that little details box on your phone, unfortunately.
Okay, so we now come to a new segment that we have lovingly referred to. We lovingly refer to WTAF. And I'll explain why in just a moment. So I have two more industry updates. One is with regard to a space travel company that once advertised one-way trips to Mars. First of all, what the fuck? I mean, really, are you really going to Mars? Are you really going to move there? And if you got so much money to do that,
one
I've got
way?
a whole other question. What means you're moving to live there? They even have an artist rendition of like what the little pod houses
Because
are going to
you
look
actually
like.
thought it was going to
real?
happen.
Look
'cause-
at that.
And so obviously somebody thought it was going to happen like in the next 20 years.
So the Netherlands-based Mars One filed for bankruptcy in Swiss court, and they officially dissolved their
Shocking.
company. Are you shocked? Are you surprised? They originally planned to send
Flabbergasted.
6 groups of 4 to Mars
Out of this
beginning
world.
in 2024. So we're talking 5 years. We're sending you to Mars. Okay.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Speechless.
surprise, and there were 100 finalists, including 6 Canadians, and the final list of 24 was supposed to be announced back in September of 2016, but was delayed due to funding. Are we shocked?
My big thought is that who paid to go to Mars one way?
Well, you know Elon Musk is going to. He's going to live there. You know that. He's going to revolutionize the world on Mars.
Okay, that's fine.
So if you want to go to Mars, maybe hook up with Elon.
He also has enough money that he can kind of come back if he needs to.
He's going to revolutionize the 8 pods.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but really? Sorry. Right?
Fascinating.
Maybe
He's gonna
10 or
that's
12
the big
pods.
thing. I mean, my husband follows it a lot more because we start hearing about these people with too much money talking about things, and I tune out. But yeah, apparently he's going to go move to Mars, and
Revolutionize
we haven't
the
even
pods.
determined that people can live on Mars yet. But we're already talking about sending them on a spacecraft. Yeah,
Everybody just wants to one-up everybody else.
that's exactly it. Okay, here's my favorite one, and Stacy has hashtagged this one. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. So apparently, a burglar, a thief, tried to break into a fried chicken restaurant, tried to rob a fried chicken restaurant. And the cashier was probably nervous, as you get if someone's, threatening to hurt you and wants your money. Couldn't get it open fast enough, so instead, the thief just stole fried chicken.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
He was if he was looking for money to maybe because he was
Hungry?
starving, right?
The chicken was probably a better deal.
Chicken was
probably a better deal. Did they catch him?
They caught him. They arrested
That's
him.
a lot of chicken. I mean, I'm just thinking, like, the guy, like, did he put it in a garbage bag? Does it say,
Well,
like, what he put
it
the
was
chicken
just, like,
in?
one
I'm
left.
thinking, like, were you just running down the street with chicken under
I'm
your
thinking
arms?
that, like, the ready-to-go meals that you see with the chicken already done. Did you just grab two and run? Like,
Did he grab a bucket? Or no, it just
Like,
says
you
that he
know?
got away with, so he tried to steal money, but he grabbed some fried chicken and fled.
Some.
But the best part is that he set his bond, like his bail bond, at $13,500 for a bucket of fried chicken.
It's like, dude, was it worth it? Really?
is he really going to be that harmful to society at 13.5, right?
And I love this. We found this on justgrubbin.com, and the poster just says
What?
justgrubbin.com.
Okay,
I love it.
Okay.
And I've got a quote with the article poster says, he's like, listen, man, I'm not condoning going around just robbing people all willy-nilly. But if you've ever had Popeyes, especially fresh Popeyes, then you definitely can feel with the perpetrator on this one. Me personally, I wouldn't have even bothered with the cash register. There's only a couple $100 in there anyway. I would have just filled my duffel bag up with spicy, some biscuits, and a few containers of red beans and rice, and would have walked around the rest of the month like I pulled off the heist of the year.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner.
Good Lord. I mean, I like fried chicken too at all, but
America!
I'm just gonna say, so every week, I'm always trying to come up with like a recipe to do in our VIP lounge. So tomorrow,
It's gotta be fried chicken
no.
now.
Oh no, because
It's got to be fried chicken.
when
now.
we're taping this is still early.
Yeah.
So anyway, so this week, before you listen to this, I'm going to be doing the Scotch egg we were talking about last week. I'm going to do a
yes.
Scotch egg
Oh, very
tomorrow. But for this one, I will have to do fried chicken. So
You
I'll
need to do fried chicken now.
I'll do
yeah.
fried chicken, but you got to be in the VIP lounge for that.
Yeah. So I'm here with my friend Viv. You might have heard me mention a few times on the show about my dance mom friends. So we were in our group text message one day. We were talking about disasters or travel or something. Passports. We were talking about passports because one of the ladies needs to travel internationally with her children and realized her son's passport was expiring, and had a bit of a crisis. And then Vivian shared the story that she's going to tell us today, and I was like, you need to tell our listeners that, because it was a crazy story, and you have such a great delivery. So thank you for sitting down with us. We're having wine today. She's got her white, I got my red. I don't know what we're drinking today, but yeah, so tell me about your travel disaster, Viv.
Okay, so about 16 years ago, my soon-to-be fiance and husband invited me on a family trip with his mother and brothers for the first time. It was just after Christmas, so of course I happily agreed. And we were destined for San Andreas, Colombia.
Oh wow.
Yeah, where I'd never been. I was super excited to visit. And they had warned me that they often experience some misadventures. So I thought I was prepared, but wasn't quite prepared for what we were going to experience that trip.
And so this is the first time you've traveled with the whole family ever?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's brothers and the mother-in-law?
Yes. And myself.
Okay. Oh yeah, and you.
Yeah. So it was Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, and we arrive at Pearson International Airport only to find out that my mother-in-law's passport was soon to be expired and they would not allow her on the plane. And back then it wasn't as common knowledge that your passport had to be valid within 6 months.
So this is not long after September 11th as well too. So like the TSA was being formed and they were just starting to tighten up on things and figure out what those processes were.
Yeah, so it was pretty crazy. So she told us to get on the plane and she would sort it out. And then she started calling people to find a way to have a new passport issued so that she could meet up with us there. So I got on the plane with my, at the time, boyfriend and brothers, and we arrive in San Andreas, Colombia.
Viv and the boys.
Me and the boys. And needless to say, the resort wasn't as picturesque as the brochure had suggested.
Oh no.
And so as soon as we got there, things started to unravel quickly. I was very concerned about whether his mom was going to make it and how And unfortunately, she's a very resourceful lady, and she managed to get a new passport issued. And after several layovers, including Bogota, she arrived a couple days later without her luggage.
Now, would she have had to like buy a new flight and everything at this point?
She did.
Wow.
Yeah. She had to buy a new passport and a new flight. So, she arrived without luggage, and
But the cocaine that she was mule for, that was fun. I'm just kidding.
so we had gone down to the market to get her some things to wear in the interim. And I believe it was the next day we had decided to tour the island and
Stayed away from this resort that was not as pictured.
Yeah. And so we did that by renting a golf cart, and the island was small enough that you could travel the perimeter of the island within a couple hours, and we stopped for lunch, and it was very pretty.
That sounds nice.
Yeah, but shortly after lunch, shortly after lunch, we were traveling, and it started to rain. So, but I mean, golf carts are.
Oh, so you're in a golf cart,
I'm
right?
in a golf cart, and my brother-in-law is driving, and I'm next to him, and my soon-to-be mother-in-law is on the right of me, and my husband and his brother are in the back of the golf cart facing.
It's a
down
pretty
the road.
loaded golf cart.
It's a loaded golf cart. We have our beach towels, and we've been to the beach, and of course it starts raining, so things are getting a little slick. But we're literally driving like 10 kilometers an hour.
Golf carts don't go very fast.
So, but as we're approaching a bend in the road, this family starts coming by on their scooters, which I can only assume they rented as well. And I remember seeing the dad come whipping by, and the mother come whipping by, and then 2 children. And quite successfully, they flew past us. And then I see this little old lady coming around the corner. And she must have been in her 70s, easily.
Bless Nana.
Yeah. And she didn't quite make it. She hit us. And gratefully, for us, she hit the edge of the golf cart and didn't hit us directly
Straight on.
or she would have ended up in our lap.
It's another story.
With the scooter. Instead, she projected over the scooter and proceeded to bounce down the coral reef.
Oh my God.
And it was really traumatic at the time.
I feel like it's still traumatic.
I still think about it sometimes. And my husband and his brother actually witnessed her hit the pavement and bouncing. And so we came to a stop, and I immediately grabbed our beach towels and went running to see if she was okay. And her family was around her, and I remember she was bleeding from her head, and she was unconscious. And so I gave them the beach towels and went running from hut to hut or shack, I'm not sure what you want to call them, but looking for a phone and doing my best to communicate with the people asking for a telephone. And I'll never forget one woman handing me, like the old-fashioned receivers that you put on the wall, handing it to me, and there was a cord attached, but the cord wasn't attached to anything.
Yeah, that's gonna work.
And I was holding it, I'm like, no, it's not gonna work. So I went racing back, and as I arrived back at the scene, she was being thrown into the back of what I could only assume was a taxi of some kind, and she was gone.
Oh my God.
And we were all just kind of shocked, and we got into our golf cart and went back to the resort, and we were all very silent and didn't really know what to think. And so I called our travel agent or our travel guide, or I can't remember what they're called, and told her what had happened to see if she can find out if this woman was okay. And then, of course, we had the issue of the damaged golf cart in Colombia. And
well, it's like such a different culture, right? Because if that happens in a first world country, police are called, 911, whatever it is in that country, 000, and people are there, and then professionals take over, and then charges are laid, and like things happen. But there, you're like,
yeah, it's really unnerving, and you feel very vulnerable, because I think our first thought was to not say anything. But then, being the overthinker that I am, started to play that out.
being the kind person that you are, that you couldn't.
Well, I would imagine her family was going to do whatever they needed to take care of her, but then I thought, if she was admitted to hospital and they said that there was an accident, and then they reported an accident, then I had these visions of the Colombian police
your husband and his brothers, because they all look so similar, all being taken away, and that was it.
And I thought, I better tell somebody about this before it... So she called around and couldn't find record of the accident or of her being admitted to any hospital. So to this day, I don't know what happened to her.
Oh, really? I was going to say, like, was she okay? Was she? You have no idea.
No idea. And I was very stressed about returning the golf cart, but my husband and brother decided that they would just pull it up and run.
That sounds about right. That's crazy.
And that seemed like the best option at that time. So, yeah, it was pretty traumatic. We were pretty somber for a couple days after, and I hope she ended up okay. But it was one of those trips where you weren't overly sad about going home.
Yeah. You're like, I just need to get back to my home and my bed in my first world country where these sad memories aren't living.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I found out later, though, that my mother-in-law was so persistent on arriving and paid to get another flight and everything, because she knew that my husband was proposing that week, and she wanted...
So your husband proposed after you watched the lady go careening?
No,
over the golf cart?
Before.
Okay.
And so she wanted to be
there for the proposal
to celebrate. So, because I remember at the time thinking, like, if it were me, I would just
give up,
chalk it up to it's money down the toilet. But then it made sense after why she was being so determined to get there. But and I believe we told this story at our wedding.
I was gonna say, like, I feel like there had to be some homage to this Nona from Colombia.
Yeah, and it's definitely an engagement that it's one for the books.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the key things for me when it comes to planning travel, again, is the planning process, obviously, but it has to do with trying to prepare enough or having enough information so that there's less chance of things going wrong when you arrive at your destination.
What is it? The Scouts motto: always be prepared.
Always be prepared. I was never Scout. I was never
but
Brownie.
It's the event planner motto too. So
I've tried it. Actually, when I went to Quebec City, because it was, I let my brother choose the restaurant. He chose the hotel. I made the reservations and stuff. But it was kind of nice just wandering around and just following, right? Not planning. But it's because I trusted the people who were doing it for me when I was there, whereas I wouldn't normally just wander around. Norm keeps saying he's going to totally plan one weekend at some point. We'll see.
Make sure it's not international, maybe.
Yeah. Sure.
We love you, Norm.
It's funny too, because I have a couple of friends that say they don't plan anything. They just get on a flight. They know where they're going, and they get there. Then they book. They book where they're staying. They do everything. And I'd be like a little nervous about that, but that's just me.
And it's not that if I already went to the destination before. So as an example, if I was last minute decided I'm going to go, there's a seat sale and I'm going to go to Madrid. been to Madrid enough times now that I know what area of downtown that I want to stay in. I can go and look for stuff. I don't mind when I get there. I know where I'm going to wander around and eat. So those are, but if you've never been before, and that's where I wanted to talk about the planning process. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to Brazil. But I've never been to Brazil before. So when I was booking, much the Airbnb, booking the flights, there was a little pop-up that showed up on my the booking page saying that, giving me a notification that traveling visa was probably going to be required for Canadians going to Brazil.
That's important. That's a really important thing to watch when you're traveling overseas, is to check in.
If I didn't notice that little line that popped up on my flight confirmation, I wouldn't have known, or if I would have booked it for next week. So I had no idea where to go. Luckily, Norm had already started looking online because he also noticed it too when he was looking up just Brazil. I don't know where he found it, but he saw that there was a visa requirement. So I found a website online, and figuring out what you can apply for it and have it emailed to you, so you have a shorter time frame, which is good. Cool. And then there was a photo required. So before we came here, went to Costco to get new pictures done. So they needed almost like passport style pictures, but not. They want them in color. Wow. It just has to be face first. Like there was some minor requirements, but basically, as long as it's a high quality JPEG photo, like straight on, no side profiles, that kind of thing. That's all they required. I think it was supposed to be $40. But then, of course, depending on what website you apply for the visa, there's different fees. But anyways, you got to look for that time window, and then I got to print off the email confirmation. I have to carry it with me. So, of course, it's not going to be tiny to fit in my passport, so it's one of those things that you have to make sure you're taking it with you. Another thing that may happen and has to do with, I went and booked through Airbnb. So because I've never been to Rio de Janeiro before, even though I've used Airbnb before, I made sure to choose a superhost, meaning they are somebody who's basically been certified as a good host. That's had good ratings from previous people that have stayed there. Airbnb recognized them as a super host. They've actually hit a certain level, so they've been doing this for quite a while. So even because it was such a good deal, like $54 a night Canadian,
you definitely want to check.
I wanted to make sure that it was actually, and I actually took the time to read the reviews. So this also goes back to not just researching the place. If you're going to a resort, when I was in, where did we go? St. Lucia, one of the things is I did not read all the reviews about the resort we were going to. If I would have read it ahead of time, I would have known that my adult-only accommodation was on the same property as the regular accommodation.
Oh,
there's
so
a lot.
There were kids at the resort, even though you thought it was
correct.
adult
So
only.
for some people to book adults only and pay the extra money, and then to get to the resort and find out that you're actually sharing a lot of the resources, right? The main resources. Yes, you might be a little upset. So that would be one. But planning. Absolutely. So reading the reviews actually makes sense. I mean, when I say read the reviews, scan through them. There's always going to be someone who gives everything a 1 star just because they want to vent. I've seen people lose their minds on reviews about there was no face cloths in their room, for crying out loud. Anyways, that's a whole other thing. That's for more information on travel reviews. You actually can see our episode, and I'll have a link in the show. We've already talked about travel reviews before. So, so planning. So the make sure your passport is up to date. Not just. This is it sounds strange, but even though your expiry date is, you think, oh, it's well in the future, I don't have to. There's a lot of places, especially cruises, that require a 6-month window before you go. So as much as you may have renewed for 5 years, you have to keep in mind you technically only have about 4.5.
Yeah, I would start the renewal process at a year, because my kids and I aren't going anywhere right now, but my daughter's expires this month, my son's expires next month, and I'm just getting the paperwork together now. So in Canada, it's cheaper to do a renewal than a new application. Yep. But if you apply after it's been expired, it's considered a new application.
You start all over.
With my kids, it's less of an issue because my son, I have to apply for an adult one anyway, so it's a new application, and for kids, it's the same application either way. But for adults, for sure, it's just worth doing it a year out. Yeah, you might lose 6 months worth of valid time, but it's worth to make sure it's up to date.
It is, and especially if you know you're going to be doing a lot of traveling, like you take the 10-year option.
Oh, absolutely.
If it's available.
Absolutely, and I think it is now. It's almost standard. I think.
I know you have choice of 5 or 10.
5 and 10.
It's still 5 and 10.
Just go for the 10.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's a big deal. So your passport, check and see if you need any visas. And then here's my other thing having to do with safety stuff. So Norm's already done some research because he saw some posts on social media and some people had posting YouTube reviews because he was looking on YouTube for video stuff. And just like there are other locations, because it's a hot spot for pickpockets and theft. So one of the things is there's a lot of other bloggers, there's people who do YouTube stuff, there's people who are posting online, magazine articles that are out there, all with tips on how to prepare yourself. So not bringing big
I have a
fancy
story
jewelry.
about that, actually.
Not packing, having your own jewelry. So little things like Norm's really trying to convince me to leave most of my jewelry back home. But like our car, we're going to be going someplace else before we fly out, and I do want to have my own jewelry there. So we might be either hiding it in the car someplace,
And leaving it.
or when we park the car and leaving it back. We haven't decided yet. So we're playing around. But there's been people taking earrings right off of. They actually give tips that they will take a cell phone out of your hands if you spend too long trying to like take your photo, take your quick video, and put your phone away as opposed to leaving it in your hand wandering around. There was one girl just for packing list suggestions of what to bring there. She was talking about how much she hates money belts, but she lived with it because she was there for 6 weeks. And she said she was actually using it almost like a fanny pack. And so all she had to do was her money and her cell phone was on her, and then her hands were free.
Absolutely.
And it was zipped away, and she didn't have to worry about it. So as much as y'all were laughing at my fanny packs, remember I told you I had fanny packs?
I've got a story around that. My sister-in-law and her husband at the time traveled to Amsterdam, and they'd been to Amsterdam a number of times because his company participated in trade shows there. And this one particular trip, they always did where they had half their money on him, half their cash on her. And what my husband and I tended to be completely honest, we don't travel with a lot of cash. We have enough cash for at the airport, and then we rely on debit machines or Visa cards on the other side. Yet you might pay a little bit more, or you have to look a little bit harder for a Visa debit machine that will, like a cash machine that will work with your card, but then you at least don't have the cash on you. This was kind of pre a lot of that stuff, so they were held up at gunpoint, the two of them. They took her earrings, like you said, and they asked for their cash, and he volunteered his cash. Hers wasn't in her wallet. Hers was it was one of those things around her neck.
Yep.
And inside her shirt. So if they had asked her for the money, she would have obviously volunteered it. She wouldn't have held it back. But because they asked for their cash and her husband shared what he had, they didn't ask for any more. So it was like lucky on their part because she had it, like you say, on her body instead of in a purse. They didn't look for it. And the other thing that I do is I actually do have spare rings. I leave my wedding set at home, and I'll just wear a plain band or a costume band, and I don't bring any of my fancy Tiffany jewelry with me.
Right.
I bring costume stuff, so that way, at least if it's stolen, even if I love it, at least it's not expensive and I'm not losing it that way.
Right.
Correct. So that's I'm going to be doing the same thing.
So do you believe in hotel safes?
Norm lives for hotel safes. He loses his mind if they don't.
Yeah.
He's really big on that, making sure it works as soon as we get in the room. A lot of times they say they have a hotel safe and they don't.
Yeah.
So he's always planning for those things ahead of time. But again, that's part of the planning process about what to do and where. So we're staying in an Airbnb in someone's apartment.
Okay.
So as much as he was saying about, well, you don't want to leave certain things in the apartment, so it's not like we're at a hotel where there's maids coming in and out, right? We're going to have, so the only other person who's going to have access to the space
The owner.
is the owner of the place and or maybe the landlord. Right, because it's in a building.
Right.
So it's one of those things that we're going to be planning ahead, but at least because we're taking the time to think things through about how to plan this, and also we're not newbie travelers either, right? So we're not completely, we're probably a little bit more relaxed about those kind of things than maybe other people are, and I'm also big on not like so over planning things that you're paranoid on an ongoing basis because we don't want to travel that way either. Anyway, so that was just my little tips, just because I'm actually going through it now, and I was saying that if we plan things ahead and you do the research ahead of time, I think it's easier, or at least you kind of know what those worst case scenarios are and you can plan them ahead of time.
And the funny thing is that part of vacation's gone wrong, but just on the travel safe thing, the vacation that I was just on, the safe worked so well I couldn't get into it to get my stuff out of it.
Oh.
I had to actually keep getting security to come and actually reset it. It kept holding our stuff in. And it wouldn't let me in it. And I kept thinking, well, this is perfect now. I know I'll always actually not worry about it because I can't even get in. I can't even get into my own safe. Right? So there you go.
That's a little
There's
scary.
always travel insurance too.
There
Consider.
is. Yes, but I want you to go through that whole
later
section,
on.
although that's
Yeah.
we'll let the
That's
experts
why
later on,
that's why I
yeah.
made it. I'm like, I'm not going to bring it up because I know she
Yeah.
can.
that was already on that part. Anyways, so time for a dining do, I think. Especially because we're here in a pub.
Yeah,
Dining do's.
Love them.
Yeah, so here's this week's Dining Do presented by Legacy Service Academy for personal and professional learning.
Hi, my name is Nicole Gignac, and I'm the manager here at Finn McCool's. I've been here since we opened, actually for 6 years. My dining do is guest satisfaction. So if you have a complaint with your meal, please don't be shy to tell us. We want to make sure that you're happy when you leave. If you give us the opportunity to fix it, we'll do our best. It's not like the movie Waiting. Nothing's going to happen to your food. We want to make sure you're happy. We don't think that you're going to want to get something free out of it. We just want to make sure that you're genuinely happy, because if you give us a chance to fix it, then you're more welcome. You're more likely to come back. That's all we would like.
Okay, so best laid plans are usually the ones that go wrong anyways. And it's funny, as an event planner and as a wedding planner, particularly because especially a wedding day is so fraught with so much emotion and so many things and so many variables and people who care so much, things always go wrong. And what we pride ourselves at my company is that when things go wrong, keeping our cool, troubleshooting, and figuring out what to do when things go wrong. So I thought it might be a good idea to share a couple of tips that when things go wrong, how to kind of keep your cool and how to kind of approach things when it's happening. So the first thing, like I said, no matter how good your planning is, and we all plan, not all of us, but a lot of us plan quite extensively. I know when we went to the UK and Scotland, because we were traveling with my friend in a wheelchair, we really overplanned, and we had booked a van that we were going to go camping in, and we had a friend arranging for bedding for us, and we were going to park in her apartment or flat parking lot and use her washroom facilities because the camper van didn't have washroom facilities. So we got there, had this great camper van booked, which I should probably send you some pictures because they're amazing.
Oh, we have it. Well, we have that. That's
Do
in
we
the
have
show
them
notes.
in the show notes?
Yeah,
So
that's
we'll
that was
post the
in
link to
the
them.
accessible travel episode.
So we got there and our van broke down.
Oh, wow.
It didn't break down. It had the most amazingly horrific siren sound inside. For when, you know, when you close a van door and sometimes you get a little beep, beep, beep if the van, stop laughing at me.
It's a funny story.
So when the van door closes, you might, and it's not closed all the way, you might get a little bit of beep, 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 beep kind of thing. Well, no. This van door, when the contact didn't work, it was a siren like an ambulance, or it was like wee 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 wee. So I'm in London for the first time ever in my life, and I'm driving. And what I didn't know, I'd heard the traffic in London was bad. I had no idea. So picture when you're driving in a third world country and they're all driving and they're pretending there's no lanes and they're just doing their thing.
Yeah.
Picture that where there are lanes and they just don't give a shit.
Right.
And they're all coming at
Lots
the
of places
same
like
roundabout
that.
at the same time, and you're not sure what your exit is, and you're working with a GPS, and all this thing is happening, and you've got wee-oo, going, and we'd just flown in from Canada, so we hadn't slept, it was a red eye, it was just bad. So anyways, I was losing my mind. So we called the van company, Wicked Campers. They're super fun, but also a very relaxed company. And they're like, oh, she'll be right, mate. Just, I'm sure it'll be fine. And we're like, oh, he says, stop at a garage and have someone look at it. And I'm like, who the hell's paying for this? So anyways, I needed to stop. So I pulled over to the garage, and apparently in London, everything shuts down at 5 o'clock. There is nothing open after. So I was like the last person to get to this garage.
They're all at the pub.
And they looked at it, exactly, because they're all at the pub. And they looked at it and they're like, we could fix it, but I'm telling you right now, it's like, a couple $1,000. It's not a cheap fix. You really need to go back to this camper company. So keep in mind, I was in traffic for 2 hours with wee-oo to find this garage in the suburbs, because of course there's nothing in downtown. I now needed to travel back to the Wicked Campers head office to trade my van. And the guy argued with me a bit. I'm like, look, so here's the key. When I spoke to this gentleman, at no point did I say, you're an idiot, even if I wanted to. Or, what are you talking about? I cannot get this fixed. Get your ass over here. It wouldn't have worked. So it was I know this is an inconvenience, and now I had to ask him to stay late. But if you wouldn't mind, we're traveling from overseas, my friend's in a wheelchair, we pulled out all the stops, but at no point was I ever a dick to him. And if there's anything that I can say when you're dealing with these kinds of situations, be kind. And I mentioned this, I think we talked about working with servers and talking to people when you're sending back food, I talked about it.
Yep.
That whole, you attract more flies with honey than vinegar is so true. So we did eventually get back to Wicked Camper another 2 hours, a wee later. And they switched our van and they were lovely and we had no dramas after that and off we went. But that was not the end of our dramas. So kindness got us what we needed. When we arrived at my friend's flat, she was getting married the next day, and all of her plans to have pillows and blankets for us completely went out the window. She was like, no, I never said that. What are you talking about? So it was November, so it was quite cold.
Wow.
Well, end of October. It was the end of October. It was quite cold in the UK. And we were faced with now sleeping in a camper van with no blankets. So we're like, maybe we'll go to like a Walmart equivalent or something along those lines. Tesco, I think it is, or something like that. And then we said, well, that's fine. What about using the washroom? Well, then we found out that she actually had a 2-flight walk up to her flat.
And she neglected to mention that?
Maybe didn't think of it, even though like her friend was my friend in the wheelchair, so she knew he was in a wheelchair. So we had no washroom and no blankets. And it's much colder than we expected in October in the UK. So at this point, again, we could have lost our bananas and, ended a friendship over it. And, but what was that going to accomplish at that point? So at that point, we go into troubleshooting mode. It's like, what can you control? What can you not? We can't control that we don't have a washroom. We can control that we don't have blankets and stuff. So we arranged and thought about going to buy blankets. And at the end of the day, that's when that emergency credit card comes out. That I'd highly recommend you travel with a credit card with some sort of open balance available. And we ended up on hotels.ca on the app and ended up booking hotels for the rest of our flight. So we ended up incurring probably about another $1,000 or so more in fees that we didn't plan to spend. But that planning ahead of having the credit card allowed us to be able to make those arrangements. So again, I mean, it could have ruined our trip, and a lot of people would let something like that completely ruin the trip. We were going to stay here, and now we're not. But at the end of the day, we went, what can we control? What can we not? And it was a small blip in our trip, and we still had a fantastic time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it is about how you position it. And I think we mentioned a little bit earlier when we talked about when things go wrong, how you choose to react to it plays a big part in whether or not you're going to get through this trip and have a lovely time anyways. So be kind to people. When you're dealing with, how many times have we been in an airport with a flight that's overbooked or a flight's delayed? We've spent, my husband and I seem to have a habit of going to Vegas in January, February, and without failure, we land in Toronto and can't get our flight to Sudbury because it's snowing or ice or whatever. And you see the people there screaming at the people at the counter,
like they can do anything.
No.
Really?
And I actually watched, because we were there a total of over 48 hours this one time, and we're watching the shift changes, but we're watching people come back as well. So, look, they were just there, they were gone for like 4 hours, and they're back again. Like that, what's going on? So when we finally, and literally we stood in line for about 8 hours to get to the front. So when we've ended taking turns. So when we finally got to the front, I said to the person at the counter, I'm like, how are you doing? And he kind of looked it back. He's like, I'm okay, thanks. I'm like, have you been able to get any sleep or had any breaks? He's like, well, actually they put us up in a hotel and I got a few hours and I just came back an hour ago. And I'm like, thank you for doing that. And he was like, oh, you're welcome. Now how can I help you? And I explained the situation. He's like, well, there's no seats, there's no, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day. I'm like, I said, I'm just so exhausted. We really want to see my babies. They've been gone for a week. Is there anything you could do? And he kind of looked at me and went, hold on. Went away, and he came back, and he miraculously found 2 seats for me on a flight to Sudbury within a couple of hours.
Wonderful.
So if I had not been kind and asked him about his day and how things are going, would he have gone that extra mile? Probably bumped someone else. But would he have done that for me if I was an asshole to him? Like, he wouldn't have.
You probably bumped the asshole.
That's exactly what it is.
Probably did.
He's like, oh my God, that jerk that just yelled at me that I got on this flight because he yelled at me, I'm going to bump him again because now he's a Gates problem. So I think it's that key of that we're all human beings. Remember that there's human beings on the other side, no matter how they screwed up and what they do.
I mean, it's their 9 to 5, right? And it's sort of like what I see people doing that, and I kind of wonder, what do you do for a living? If I came to your place and started acting like that to you, how would you react? It doesn't matter what you do or why you do what you do, but the thing is that if you're gonna, that's your character. Your character comes out true and fierce when you're standing there having a problem.
And I think I posted it before. I think I actually probably posted a live video. I forget where I was. Not the last trip or the trip before, where I was kind of venting about people complaining at the resort.
Oh, yeah.
To anyone who would listen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
To things that had no control, giving a rundown of every menu item that was bad, just running. And I guess I could say, why would people do that? And it dawned on me, okay, for a lot of people who maybe have saved up and they're finally going away, or they go to an all-inclusive resort and yes, you're getting a great service. It's like, it's never enough for some of these people. Like, they like to push the level. I actually had talked to a couple probably 5-6 years ago that I knew, And they admitted that a lot of times they are actually complaining on purpose
To get deals or discounts.
stuff, to
Yeah.
get an upgraded room, to get an upgraded whatever, to get this for free, and I thought, oh, but do you not realize, just like I think did we do an online complaint? They're making note of that. So if you do that for restaurants as an example, even where you're away, or if you booked through something like Open Table, so not only is Open Table, you get to rate the restaurants that you are booking through, the restaurants are also rating you, kind of like just like an Airbnb. So if you are completely rude and angry to whoever, even a hotel chain, Marriott as an example. So they're also logging stuff in, and it's one of those things that it's always going to. It may not come back to you this trip, but I always find that it seems to be. And normally, I kind of laugh to each other when we see somebody like losing their mind over something small at wherever we are, and we always say, "I bet you something like that happens to them everywhere they go."
Yeah.
Oh,
They look for
absolutely.
it. They look for it.
Absolutely.
They either look for it or they are just. They're constantly complaining. They're never happy. They're probably complaining when they're at home, or they just, I don't want to get completely philosophical, but you kind of invite negativity into your life the more negative that you are. And I'm always kind of frustrated when I see people who are like, oh my gosh, you are on a beach having poolside service with drinks.
Away from freezing rain.
Right? Where everybody else is snowed in at home or whatever
Right.
else. And you were complaining because your tequila was not strong enough.
Oh, or the glasses were plastic instead of glass.
Yeah. Do you,
Or they were
like,
smudgy.
Is that really ruining your vacation?
Let's talk about the things that really do go wrong and could go wrong, and then maybe be okay with the fact that they gave you the wrong room, but it's still a clean, safe room, and you're on the beach.
And you're on
Right.
the beach. Exactly.
Right. And you can deal with it while you're there. And if you handle it in a nice way, say, listen, you put me into
Kindness.
the wrong. Even if you book yourself or use an agent, you're the first line, right? And you have more power than someone who's like hundreds and thousands of miles away or whatever, right? But the thing is that you have to be able to say, I booked this room. I'm getting this room. Any chance that there might be an available room coming up, someone's checking out, we need to be upgraded, we need to be put into this room because that's what we paid for.
And
And
so-
that's all you have to really say, right?
What I wouldn't want anyone to think is to confuse kindness with being a pushover as well either.
Right.
There's a difference between being assertive and being aggressive,
Absolutely.
right? Like you say, like, this is what I booked. Here's my paperwork that shows this is what I
Paperwork.
booked.
Can we do an
Here's-
event on paperwork after?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And here's what I got, and so this is not okay.
Yes.
I had a situation where I was at a resort in Niagara. We were there for a dance competition. We went every year to the same resort, and the room wasn't as we booked. There were just a number of things. There was something about the restaurant. They wouldn't seat us in the restaurant with our friends because they're like, no, you can't sit with them. I'm like, why not? Like, it was a weird kind of, and we just had a lot of things that were going on in this particular experience. And I was kind. I was like, you know what? Like, this is not. It's not okay. The restaurant is empty. You won't let us sit with our friends because you're saying you're saving that space, but no one came in the hour we were there. This is not good customer service. What can we do about this? And they're like, nothing. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I just spent $1,000 to be here. We're here every year. You've got like,
In other words,
all
the
of these
person you were
people,
talking to did not have
they
the authority
didn't
to
care,
make the
right?
change.
Which is fine, which is cool. But you know what? The next time we spoke with our wallets, and when they had a dance competition there, we stayed across the street at this teeny weeny little roadside motel that could have been really scary. It was owned by this really lovely expat couple from Asia who were beautiful and sweet, and it was like cheesy, but it was lovely.
Yep.
And so it's like, you got to think about that being assertive is okay, because at no point was I ever a jerk about it. Now, maybe if I'd been a jerk, maybe they would have responded better. But in this case, I think it was better to vote with our wallet, or to
Right.
speak with our wallet.
Absolutely.
I think documentation is important when you touched on that. And
Absolutely.
As much as I live on my phone, I like to save things to my desktop.
Yeah.
So, and I download it to my phone when I get to a place with Wi-Fi. So, and having the app. So if I book something through hotels.com, I make sure I have the hotels.com app. I actually will check it and pull it up before I leave to make sure that the confirmation, everything else is in there. So I can actually say, this is what I booked, and I can show it. Because when you're using one of those third-party services like hotels.com or something like
Absolutely.
that, they're essentially selling rooms
Yeah.
and then sending the money. So going back to my just booking for Brazil as an example, so I booked my flights through a third-party provider, right?
Yep.
So I can get the cheaper price, because
Yep.
that's what you do.
Yep.
And then I but they now have to pay the airline that I booked on. So as much as I went on the next morning and tried to do seat selection, possibly check and see what the upgraded seats are, it still showed that my confirmation was there, but they were still waiting payment, right? Because one hasn't paid the other one yet. So those are kind of things that, okay, I need to double check to make sure that's in
Closer
there.
to that time.
Seat selection, make sure that, because sometimes things happen with the airline, or I think the last trip that we went on, as much as we paid for certain seats, we paid for the certain upgraded to seats and selected certain seats. By the time we went and checked in, for whatever reason, we were not even sitting together, let alone the seats we booked us.
whatever.
Yeah.
They had changed the flight or
Yeah.
the style of plane or whatever it is, and they just randomly put us anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's always little things, but the fact that I had a receipt showing that I paid for that, one thing I know that I have to admit that we're not always good at is that there's a lot of those situations where they say go back. You need to contact the airline when you get home to get the reimbursement for the
Yeah.
fees you paid and all that
And
kind
we
of
forget
stuff.
to do that.
And we always forget to do it, which is not cool. So
But that's what they count
So
on,
y'all
right?
airlines
Yes.
are really lucky that we haven't followed up on all those things.
That's what they count on.
Right.
Call when you get home to get your credit. It's like they're counting on you forgetting. And
Correct.
something else that comes to when you're booking through third parties as well that we've experienced with our, so a bit of background with the dance competitions I'm talking about all the time, we pre-book our rooms like 6 months in advance because they get filled up really quickly and then you can't stay at the same place as everyone else. But we always get the schedule 30 days out and we need to adjust our reservation based on when our children are dancing. And I had one particular situation where I had booked through hotels.ca and I needed to change the room. And I called them and they said, well, we can't make the change. And I said, why not? Because what they actually have to do is they have to cancel the room and then do a new booking. But because it was sold out, they couldn't make the change. Because if they canceled it, it was showing sold out and they couldn't book another one. Because they basically need to book another one and then cancel mine so they don't lose mine. So, and in that case, then I was like, and they said, well, we'll call the front desk for you. And they put me through to the front desk and the front desk was like, no, I can't help you. There's nothing else. No good.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, well, that's not okay because it was really expensive. It was like a $500 a night one because it was a resort. Yeah, it was gross. Welcome to being a dance mom. That's a whole other story. But what we ended up doing was I actually emailed the resort directly and I said, here's my situation. I booked through the third party. We're booked this night. No one can seem to help us because I think they all need to book first and rebook, which the system isn't doing. I need to cancel this night. I don't need the night and blah, 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 blah. And they were really lovely and they ended up emailing me back and saying, yep, no problem, we made the change for you. I brought the email with me on the day and it was not an issue. So recognize, like you say, that there are other resources that you can go to, but at no point was I a jerk about it. I was still kind. I went, you know what, I get it, this is the situation, but let's see if we can kind of work around a little bit more. So be persistent while being kind, I think.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's good.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. And I think too when you're in those situations, especially in it, you have more power than you think while you're there. A lot of people say, well, when you go home, what can you do to rectify? Sometimes it's best if you have if you book third party, make sure you keep that information with you, the email address, the number who to call to fix it, because fixing something after the fact it's kind of mute in a sense because they're like, well, you already enjoyed your vacation. Why didn't you call when you were there? Right? You didn't make an essence of doing it. And I've learned that the hard way myself. And it's, you just make sure you jot everything down, jot everybody you talk to, make the documentation that you need to do. Travel insurance is huge, I think. It's hard to talk about because people say, well, I've just already spent like $6,000-$7,000 on this huge trip. Why would I want to spend another $600? Well, it's because you just invested $5,000 or $6,000, and that's why you want to spend $600 more to ensure the fact that if your luggage goes missing because of the airline, or you end up there and something happens, or you end up hurting yourself and have to be flown home, you need to make sure, because otherwise it's that emergency credit card that's going to start dinging. And it's true, because to fly home from somewhere in the Caribbean can cost up to $60,000-$70,000 to charter, because you have to charter a private flight out, and it's quite expensive. And it's better to take a hit initially with the $600 than do something else. Ensure your investment that you're doing, because you're investing in yourself and investing in the self-care that you need to have a vacation, it's no different than investing in anything else that you choose to invest in. But definitely consider an insurance, your insurance, of making sure that things do go wrong, because the best laid plans don't always do that.
Yeah,
They
and
can
it's
do
like,
it.
and again, it comes under doing your research as well, because there are some, for example, my company offers travel insurance, believe it or not, with our benefits. We have crazy benefits. Some of your credit cards offered as well too, but just know what is
You're getting.
covered and know what isn't. So
what
make an
percentage.
educated decision, right?
Exactly, and what percentage, and are you going to get full on 3 days of worth of clothes and stuff that you need to get in toiletries when you get there? How much is that? Is it $250 or is it $500? Because it makes a difference if you're a family of 1 or a family of 5, because it doesn't really extend that well. And worst case scenario, also, it's sort of the prepping, but the hindsight is if you are doing third party, make sure you read the really fine print about what's covered, what's not. Is there change availability? Is there, is it once you pay, it's gone? Because I've had that situation where it's like, it's done, it's over. Okay, what do you do? Nothing. You can't.
Where you paid for your trip
Yeah,
and you've gone
and
there,
you've done
something's
something,
happened,
yeah, and
then
there's-
you paid for it there instead of calling when it happened.
Yep. And it happens, right? More than we like to talk about it, but could we do something different? Probably. If you do go through an agent, you don't have to, because again, best prices a lot of the time are online, because you're getting rid of that middle person for commission and stuff.
Yep.
So I'm saying it is what it is, but however, having that assurance that someone's on the other end while you're on the trip, if there's a situation, a lot of agents will give you their phone number and say, listen, text me, call me, that's why you paid for me. You just gave me $100 or $200 commission because I am on call when you are away for your 25 days or 10 days or 5 days or 7 days. That's where our connection is as an agent. And I find that we can easily call the resort or call the cruise line and say, listen, this is what's up, this is the confirmation number, this is what's happening, and it does get fixed. And it's easier, right? But
For me, I think for the way we do, other than we go to Australia, just because when we go to Australia, we've lived there and it's our friends, we're staying with our friends and that kind of thing. But for us, if we're traveling internationally, we want to use an agent because we want that backup of that person who would know how to help us and know how to get us help maybe in a country that we're not familiar with. But when we're doing domestic stuff, we tend to do it on our own because if you save
It
cost
is
savings
cheaper.
when it comes to flights and that kind of thing. So that's my personal way of approaching it for us, because when you're in a strange country and you don't know where you are, you don't know what's going on, having someone at home who can help advocate for you is definitely that peace of mind that's worth it. For me, for the $50 to $100, $200, whatever it is.
And I know we were talking about things going wrong. I was in Greece about 2 years ago, and I was in the parking lot. It was my birthday. It just happened to be my birthday. That's why I'd always hit strap. I got backed into. I was standing in the parking lot. Dude wasn't paying attention, and he hit me. And the thing is that we don't think about the physical or the medical side of it. The insurance is really important because if something does happen, you need to follow up
You're
on
paying
it.
hospital bills when you're in
Right.
another country. It's scary.
And I
Not
was out-
everyone has healthcare for you like we can walk into in Canada and just get fixed.
No, it's called where's your credit card before you
Exactly.
even see someone. So it's huge. And also, if there's something really, 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 really wrong, and if you do go with a travel agent, people can actually send emails to TICO, which is the actual certification of a travel agent, and that's where the issues do get rectified, I guess. So, so TICO is another step in terms of being able to fix what's happening, and that would be done through an agent if you book through an agent, and that's the security of if you do choose to do that. And I mean, again, there's savvy travelers people who travel a lot. Comfortable to be able to book an Airbnb. Oh my goodness, I'm like, you're my hero. I mean, it's what a great way to travel to be able to do that.
Well, and that's why I think we're so excited about it, is
Yeah.
because we want to start doing it more and more, and we want to stop using hotels and resorts as crutches.
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of time, because we're more comfortable going off site and touring around things on our own, we get to see a lot more of our destination when we're not sort of stuck in that little
and you get immersed.
comfortable bubble.
You
Right?
get
You're living the
immersed
culture more.
into what you want. You get to eat, you get to drink, and you get to smell and see the whole culture that you're in. And
We
I
just
think
don't have
it's
someone
wonderful.
making our bed every day.
That is rough.
It's rough.
I know.
You just like
Turn down service. Norm, get on the turn down service.
Service.
Did you bring the chocolates?
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I talk about two little tips for travel insurance? Since I was mentioning it. If you plan or you are traveling often, look into annual plans. So we are on an annual plan where it's automatically renewed. considering my husband is a wealth management advisor, he tends to take care of all the money situation, but I believe it's through one of his credit cards who provides it. But we have an annual plan, and it's just like every spring it just automatically renews.
Well, and it's so important.
So we never have to think about, do we have insurance for this trip? Do we have to go and ask for it for this flight? Do we need it for anything? We are always covered. And because it's the same place, we kind of get used to it, and we know what their rules are.
Yes.
And their number one rule is, you do not pay for anything, you do not do anything until you call us first.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they need to be your first phone call.
Yes.
So by calling this 1-800 number that's on the, and we can access it through the back of the credit card, but we call the 1-800 number, here's the little, have the confirmation number or membership number or whatever it is, it's in my phone, so I always have it handy. So now I can just be calling it at any time, and they will direct you on what you need to do. They may need to speak to the doctor, the airline attendant. They may be the ones who need to actually ask all that stuff. They will let you know what you need receipts for. They will let you know what you have to pay for if they're going to send you.
Absolutely.
So they'll kind of walk you through all that. But there's a lot of times where I've heard stories where people went ahead and did certain things because they didn't want to pay the money to pay the 1-800 thing
Oh my
or
God,
whatever it
and then you
was.
get
covered.
And then they find out they don't get covered, and then they're up in arms figuring, oh, I'll just go and send the receipts when I get back. No, it doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't.
You did not
you have
call
to have
them
it approved first.
Yeah.
And just another thing on top of the annual is if you travel a lot, and even if you don't travel a lot, depending on where you're planning to travel in a year time, if you actually quote out with somebody, whether it's an insurance broker or somebody anywhere, the bank or your credit card, find out what your insurance is going to be for that duration of that trip because of your age, your health, where you're going, where you're doing, because it might actually be cheaper in the long run to do the yearly annual income.
Because 12 months is a long time.
And I mean, there was one year where I should have done annual and I didn't. I've never since that day have not done annual, whether I travel once or 10 times. Because it's well worth it, because then and I've lost luggage, it's been replaced, and you know what I mean, and it's well worth it once or twice when you lose your luggage and you didn't bring a carry-on coverage. I mean, really?
Oh, that's a good. I don't know if I've mentioned that in previous packing episodes. So there's a couple ways when it talks about losing luggage. So a couple of my other tips might turn this part of into a blog post actually for this week. I may have packed it before, mentioned it before, so I'll put it again. So a couple of things: having some of my stuff in Norm's suitcase, some of Norm's stuff in my suitcase. Now, because odds are, usually if luggage is going to get lost, it's never all of our luggage, right? It's like one bag that gets left or gets detoured or gets left back at the airport or something. It's rare that it's both of us. So by having some clothes, and as much as it doesn't bother him, because we went through, I forget where we were, it was a company trip or some sort, and his luggage was what was missing. But for, my tiny little husband to just go walking into the gift shop and buy himself sunglasses, flip-flops, a bathing suit, right? We got him, we went into town later, got him a toothbrush and whatever, but it was like nothing for him to get extra things that he needed to last for the 5 days, and he was fine.
Not everybody.
I can't just go into a gift shop and go and grab a bathing suit off the rack.
Me either.
And it'd be different if it was just Norm and I, but we were at a corporate event. If you ever, for all of you who have ever been to resorts and you look at those little tiny bathing suits that are being sold at those places.
See you showing up with the little triangle bathing suit that has the resort name on it.
I love. Oh my God. That's another blog.
Which has floss, basically for the bottoms.
Yeah.
So since I'm going to Brazil, I've already got warned about that. But anyways, it's one of those things that it'd be different. But now I have to be looking respectable, so I can't do that. It's not like I can just go and buy bras. Right, at resorts, or you may not be in a place that's, so I am very paranoid about me not having what I have. So if I can't have one outfit or a couple of key pieces in my carry-on with me, which is most of the time what I'm doing, for backup I still always have, maybe, I don't even care if it's like a small, one of the, what do you call those, packing cubes?
Yes.
Of just some
Just
of
take a
my,
packing cube,
absolutely,
put it
like
in
if I had,
necessity.
if my bag gets lost between my carry-on and the packing cube that is in Norm's suitcase, that if that's all I have, I'm good for the week. So I always kind of plan around that stuff so that if I don't have to. So I just had to talk about the packing.
No, I think it's great.
So I'll put a show link, because I'm pretty sure I either wrote a blog post or I talked about it in a previous episode, so I'll put a link to that.
You were talking. You had 2 points about insurance. You talked about the annual. What was the? Do you recall what you were going to say?
It was just the 1-800 number. It had to do with make sure you
I just
read the
wanted to make sure
details because every
yeah.
insurance provider is different. So especially if you were not doing an annual plan and you're booking the insurance when you book your trip, right? Because there's always that option for add-on. So whether you're doing it online, whether you're doing it with an agent, they're always going to say, "No, do you want the insurance on it?" your company might be dealing with Manulife, another company might be dealing with somebody else, and each of those insurance providers has their own rules and requirements of what it needs to be done, what they're covered, that kind of thing. So don't just automatically assume that every insurance company is the same. So that's what that was all I was going to say.
I think that's all I can say is just definitely if you'll find if you prepare well, you read the fine print, if you're using other stuff, know what you're going into, and definitely you're not going to get first world food and first world everything when you're on a vacation, because that's why you're leaving this, so that you can experience something different. Be reasonable.
Oh, calling a travel agent because you don't like the food in Cuba does not count.
No, please don't.
Oh my God, no.
I will laugh.
Well, don't go expecting chicken fingers and fries wherever you go, right?
How many people I get calls from going, oh, this is horrible, it's horrible.
Forget
Why is it horrible?
I was just talking to.
Right.
I know. It's like, really, you're not being poisoned. I was talking to.
find
There was one
something
couple
on the
that were, their kids are finally getting old enough they can leave them because they have a couple young children and they're planning to go away, and they were actually looking at Cuba, but they were hesitating because everybody else was telling them the food in horrible is Cuba.
Actually really good.
And I'm thinking, wait a minute, no, if you're eating burgers and pizza all week,
Yeah.
it's not going to be the best burgers and pizza you probably had
because
all
it's a
week.
different flavor.
And it's also because the Cuban people don't eat pizza and burgers.
Right, so they don't know
right?
how to cook.
So why would you? So that would be like me going to Spain and being upset that they don't have duck confit,
Right.
right? Because
Right.
that's not Spanish things,
I
right?
love my family, but the big thing was when we went away to the Dominican for my brother's wedding, was that the best restaurant there was the Italian restaurant.
Pasta.
It was crappy pasta. For Mark and I, it was the worst meal we had, right? But for them, it was recognizable and something that, they knew that what it was, versus where we were like trying the sushi, we were trying the local fare, we were trying everything. But it's that when you're going on vacation, be prepared for a different experience, because then you'll experience it better than if you're going away and expecting what you get at home.
And I hate bringing up things like this, but I will. You see the commercials about traveler's diarrhea and those kinds of things, and the vaccines. I'm a big advocate for Diggerol, and I know we shouldn't probably mention names, but you know what?
Probably get some free publicity.
You know what? Every so many years, I make sure I have my booster of it. Because when I walk into a buffet, no matter where I'm going, whether it's Cuba, Dominican, Jamaica, or it's on a cruise ship, E. coli could be anywhere. It could be on a cruise ship being cross-contaminated. So just because you think you're getting, you know what I mean, be careful, be aware of it. I want to be able to eat the lettuce if I choose to. If I want to try to sample something I haven't, I want to. So just be aware. Again, preparing yourself to know if you're willing to do something to keep yourself even more safer.
So
before
there's like
you
a
go.
travel booster that will help you avoid getting sick when you're away.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a liquid. It's a liquid.
Yep.
Yeah, I do it every. Yeah, and then after
You
you
just
do
buy
it
it
the
at like the pharmacy or
You
whatever?
need a script for it. You
Okay.
go to a travel, and what they do is it's a little vial of liquid, and it's a little sachet of little granules. You put it in. It tastes like bubble gum, and it's very thick, and it's kind of gross. But you just take it. I think it's 2 to 3 hours before you eat anything, and you do it in the morning. Do it, and then you need the second dose 1 week before you go away. The first time you do it. Then within 2 years, I think it's a year and a half, 2 years, if you travel again, you need to get one more booster of it, but you don't have to take the 2, you just take the 1, so they only give you one with 1 and 1 in
Is
it.
it like Twinrix?
Different than Twinrix, because Twinrix is for Hep B and Hep A and all that stuff, so that's if you get contaminated with stuff. This one is E. coli and cross-contamination issues. So if it's an issue, a lot of people hate the food because they stick to stuff they're familiar with, and this is what I was.
But part of
rather
the
than
stuff that
trying
they're familiar
it.
with, and it's sometimes the things that are actually giving you E. coli. So
Yes,
my number one
exactly.
rule is, as much as I am a cheese hound when I'm at home, I rarely eat dairy when I'm away. And
agree.
it's partly because between hot climates, I will if I'm traveling overseas or something like that. But to go to Mexico and eating the cheese, anything that's cheesy on a buffet, cheese or the cream or the milk or the yogurts, I don't care when it's like 30-something degrees outside, you're just asking for trouble. So anything that can spoil that way, I don't care how pretty the sushi looks if it's been sitting out
Well,
for a
you
little
can see
while.
it. You can see like the cheese sometimes has that nice glaze that, when you're at home, even you do it here. If you have people out, sometimes you get that, it's been sitting outside. You know what I mean? And it
Whether
hasn't
either
been
it's got like a little
refrigerated.
bit of skin on it, or a little bit of condensation.
Yeah, and it all resorts. The
Well,
cheese
that's a
always
good-
has condensation.
Ugh.
So I always stay away with it too, right? But
anyways, it's just learning what to
Yes.
eat and what not to eat
Yeah.
and being safe for it.
Yeah.
So this is a good segue. We could talk about what's happening for next week. I was trying to figure out what a fun episode was going to be. I was originally going to do one about liquor store thefts, but I think we're going to, because by the time you're watching this, next week will be Flavor Fest. So I really want to do an in-depth one on that particular episode, so I'm going to move it to the following week. And I think for next week, I think it's a great thing to do about buffets.
Oh.
Now, considering, yes, because people are going to be traveling. Right now, everyone's going away for get their ready for March break. They're going to a lot of restaurants and things. So there's a love-hate thing with buffets, and that kind of does tie into what we were talking about. What to eat, what not to eat, what things to avoid, how to take things at a buffet and create different things. I think I took photos before about how, I always at the last week, right, when I'm like, oh, I took this and this and this and I created this. I'm not a huge fan of buffets. First of all, I don't eat that much in one sitting, so that's one of the things. I've also seen, because I'm a bit of an etiquette person, it drives me bonkers that people don't know proper etiquette for a buffet.
Well, you shouldn't be skimming all the good stuff off the top of everything.
Yes.
Or touching your fingers to the food.
Yeah. Or eating as you're going. Anyways, we're going to go through that next all the do's and don'ts of buffets.
I think I might have a few WTA apps already.
Oh, I already do. I'm going to add in on that one.
Anyways, and I also, through the courses through Legacy Service Academy for servers and for people who are working in the industry, also do training on how to do buffet setup, good foods and stuff, or menu selections for doing buffets, but we're not necessarily going to touch through that, but it will make a good blog post to go and tie in with that. So next week's going to be buffets. And next week's Flavor Fest. Yay!
Yay!
So we will be out in full force for the entire weekend. Actually, after we're finishing taping this, we're actually got our notebooks and stuff out
Planning.
because we have to plan out who's going to get to go where. It's going to be like a raffle system.
I think it's going to be a fight to the death, personally.
And so there's going to be at least one of us at any of the ticketed events. We're going to try making appearances at every single one. So even those that are running like maybe particular menu specials throughout the weekends, we will be there at some particular time. You will see our banner. Excuse me, we're going to have a new banner. So all of us will have a banner. We're also going to have a tripod and stuff with us. If you have a story to share about travel when you're seeing us, if you want to give a shout out to one of your favorite events on Flavor Fest weekend, we're going to be doing live postings, we're doing social media stuff. We're going to do quick little demos, maybe some behind the scenes stuff, because I'm sure that certain places will let us in the kitchen.
Yay!
So there'll be all kinds of fun things. So basically we just want to show off the culinary industry here in the city. And so we have an entire weekend filled of schedules for you to do just that. Okay, so in the meantime, it's time for you to rate and subscribe. So we're on all the podcast players. Every once in a while, I keep finding there's another one. So if there's a podcast player that you can't find us on, please send us a message, because it seems to be every week there's a new podcast platform that is out there. I can't keep track of all of them. I know we're on all the big ones.
We don't want to try listing them anymore.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're on all the big ones. So the usual ones like Spotify, iHeartRadio. We used to go and test Stacy to see if she can remember all of them, because she's like.
And this one. And that one. And that one again.
Anyways, the easy ones: Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Breaker Radio, Stitcher Radio. That's right. So, anyways, TuneIn Radio. So, anyways, we're on most of them. That's all you need to know. And of course, we're on YouTube for those who want the video version. And rating us is really easy. If you're listening to us on the podcast, please go down and actually give us those star ratings. The more, the better. And then you can leave comments if you like, or just the star rating. We're happy with that. Also, for the YouTube thing, feel free to give us the little like button. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss an episode, click that little notification icon that looks like a bell, and subscribe to it, and that will basically have a little notification pop up when you have the next episode. And of course, we're always weekly because we never miss a week, even if we have to plan ahead. So till next week, we're going to be back in the pub.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks so much for watching this video. We love putting it together. It's so much fun. All of our favorite things, good food, good drinks, a lot of travel talk, and we put it all together in one fun show. So make sure you follow us here, click on the videos below, follow, subscribe, and find us on your favorite podcast player. We'll see you on our next trip.